Today we're going to be talking about the components of a grant proposal, and so we'll go through this webinar here, and if you have questions, again, you please feel free to use the chat or your microphone. So today we're talking about the building blocks of a grant proposal. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about the overview of the grant writing process. I just wanted to refresh your memory if you didn't attend that one and you're interested. We talked about the overview of the grant writing process in general. And so from building an idea towards really building a proposal, looking for funders, customizing that proposal, building relationships, and implementing the project and reporting. So we talked about developing your idea as well. So the who, what, when, where, why, and how. What is it you want to do? Why, and how are you going to make that work? Once you have a good sense of what your idea is going to be, then you're likely ready to put that into writing into a proposal. And so the purpose of the proposal, and I think sometimes we can get kind of hung up on the boxes and the process and filling in the actual form, whether it's electronic or something that you write online and print out and send in. Sometimes that can be overwhelming, but it's really important to always go back to the fundamental purpose of a proposal, and it's that kind of job application comparison where you're demonstrating to a funder that you can help them achieve their goals. Just like your organization has some goals, all funders have goals that are clearly defined, and you're helping them meet that. So everything that you write, it's important to kind of keep in mind that you're writing it down to help a funder clearly understand what you're about and that you can help them. So you want to be professional, you want to be clear, and you want to show that you're a good steward of potential funding that they may entrust you with. So the typical building blocks of any proposal are often the same. Sometimes they have different names, but they're generally these kind of 6 main categories. So there's typically some kind of introduction. We'll go through each of these in more detail in a little bit. There's some kind of statement of need. And then the bulk is often, so what are you going to do about it? What's your process that you're proposing? What's your work plan? And then expected outcomes. What do you hope to achieve or accomplish? And then there's often some kind of evaluation process and budget. Okay. So the introduction, and oftentimes this is towards the beginning of a request for a proposal. So these are the questions that a funder will ask you as you're filling out your proposal. They often ask a little bit about your organization. And there are some main components in an introduction section that even if they're not clearly listed, it can be helpful for you to kind of think in these terms. And so some of those elements here are what type of organization are you? And this could be something short and sweet. We're a family farm, or we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a government agency. We're a co-op. We're an informal organization. And then a brief history. So this could be in that same sentence. Established in 1997, or third generation dairy farm, or it could be, we've been operating as a food council for 3 years, but we just recently received our 501c3 status last year, something like that. And a little bit about your mission. If you don't have a formal mission statement, it might be helpful to talk with those key folks in your organization. Maybe you're a family farm and you haven't really discussed this. What are you about? How do you make decisions? What are your kind of core reasonings for existing? What is it that you primarily do? And then who do you serve? Sometimes this is most obviously a geography. So if you're Indiana-based and you tend to serve a certain part of the state. We primarily serve the Fort Wayne area, or we serve such and such county, or maybe you have a niche market that you serve farmers markets in the northwest part of the state, something like that. So it's both kind of your geography, but then it might also be who are your clientele, just very generally. Usually in an introduction, this whole section might be a paragraph or two. Who are your key staff? So if someone's going to give you money, they want to know that you can handle it and that you have expertise to do it. So just a very brief overview of who your key staff or volunteers are. There are no two family farms that are the same. There are no two organizations that are the same. So just a little bit of overview of how you're different than some others. So maybe you have one full-time staff person, 2 part-time support staff, and 7 kind of longer-term volunteers, as well as an active board or something like that. So just a brief description of who you are, who the people are in your organization. And then you might want to share some related successes if it doesn't ask you elsewhere in the program. I'm hearing some feedback, so if somebody's on who doesn't have his or her phone muted, go ahead and do that, and I think we can do it on our end as well. If you do have a question, go ahead and try again, or you can use the chat box. Okay, so some related successes. Maybe you have recently grown. Maybe you're applying for a project that involves high tunnels, and you've just completed a successful study including high tunnels. So you're already familiar with the equipment and you've used them before. Something like that might help establish credibility with a funder. Okay, so the second part is a statement of need. And I think many of us kind of think about our own little world, and we tend to think short-sightedly. We need money to build X, Y, and Z. We need money to do this. Well, the statement of need for most grant proposals is what are the community needs? Not what are your needs, but what are the big needs out there in a community? What is it that you're trying to move forward in the world with what you're doing? It's kind of those bigger, more noble needs. And whether that, for many of you who are dealing with food, it might be something associated with food security or nutrition. It might be production efficiency, that there's a need out there to make a process better so that people can add value to their funding, or alleviate some labor concerns if there are health issues with doing something the current way that it's being done. So lots of needs related to food, but if you think outside of your organization, outside of what it is that you are currently doing, what's the bigger need in the world that you're kind of trying to help improve? So there are 3 parts of a statement of need. Sometimes the first part is what's the problem to be addressed. So this is kind of stating, how you see that issue. You're going to frame your project to respond to a need. So maybe you want to build those high tunnels, and the need that you're addressing is ways to have local farmers be able to increase their productivity in the shoulder season, so early spring and late fall through high tunnels. So you have kind of an economically driven need to help farmers maintain profitability. And then, so what facts justify that? Well, there are many ways to look for facts, and we'll talk about a few of them, but some are community needs. So let's say you've done some kind of market assessment for what the community needs, and maybe you've done some or are aware of some interviews at farmers markets where people have said, you know what, we're really looking for fresh greens year-round or something like that that might show some need very locally, very clearly. You also might look at some national trends. Those facts can justify a need. There might be some trade organizations or government agencies that have those facts already listed for you. And so doing some research here on fact finding can be helpful, but showing some facts that justify what it is that you're trying to make a story about. And then what's the implication of these facts? So if people are really looking for those greens year-round, and the impact of this is that we'll be able to have more nutritious food, people will be able to have higher income if we can sell those greens at, you know, $8 a bundle in the off-season over the long run, some of those kinds of things. Okay, so some ways to find facts. Certainly online is an amazing door that's been open to finding facts. What you want to do is look for things that most closely relate to the need that you're trying to justify, whether it's showing how this particular program worked in a different part of the country and they have supported it with some facts about their project, and you think that might be a good fit here. You might want to, it always depends on your project, but really looking for those strong research-based facts, whether they're from a government source or university source or reputable nonprofit, are often helpful. A lot of state agencies have facts. You can find a lot of really good demographic information through your community's Department of Education. So often school districts have very localized demographic data about who the people are in your community, what the poverty rates are, what some of those other factors might be. There are many. The census, of course, has a lot of those numbers as well. But really trying to show a story about the place where you are and the kind of need that you're trying to meet locally. I see Jody is posting that April 7th there'll be a lot more information about using data to show this, so that's awesome. Great. And so then what people often want to get to when they're writing a grant proposal is, what are we going to do? And this is where you're really, showing, well, we want to, implement a volunteer summer gardening program to teach youth how to grow and eat and prepare nutritious food. And so here's what we're going to do. So all of that stuff typically goes in a section that can be called many things. Sometimes it's, what's your work process? What are you proposing? What's your project? What is it that you would like to do to meet the need? And oftentimes, this is going to show what you're going to do, but then there's also kind of the nuts and bolts work plan of what it is that you're planning. And sometimes that can be represented in a table. I'll give you a brief example of what that looks like, the who's going to do what by when table. And so if you had some kind of project in mind, having that written down in some kind of expected timetable might be helpful in a grant proposal. Sometimes it's helpful even for communicating with your own team about who's doing what. Okay, and then the expected outcomes piece is the so what. So you have this need in your community, you're going to do this thing, and then you want to show that something is going to change as an outcome of that. So it could be, if you're working with a new technology, a new farming technology or something like that, you might want to be able to show how productivity will increase. for different projects, you might want to show how nutrition will increase, or farming knowledge, something that you can show will have an impact. And ultimately, if you can demonstrate in some way that your big need, whether it's health, food security, efficiency, bottom line dollar productivity, or nutrition, something like that. If you can show that something like that is going to change either for people involved in your program or for the community at large, it's really important to be able to connect those dots for your funder. Sometimes by doing that, you might be replicating a program that was able to show how it connected those dots in another community, or you might be expanding a program that was able to do that on a small scale. Something like that is helpful. There also may be evaluations that you plan to do yourself. And so sometimes having a pre and a post test, what did people learn? How did they change? How did their bottom lines improve if you're trying to teach something? How did their health improve? So you can do some measurements along the way. Maybe you're measuring something technical like nutrient qualities in a kind of produce or something like that, and you have a method for measuring that. So it's up to you often to present that you've thought through to the evaluation level and have some kind of plan for measuring what it is that you want to have change in a community. And then oftentimes, kind of the true test of how serious you are is how reasonable is your budget. Have you really thought about what it costs to do what it is that you want to do? And is your budget that you're laying out practical? Is it, a funder doesn't want to see something that isn't really estimating high enough of what it actually takes to cost to do something, nor do they want to see you spending a whole lot of money on things that could be done for much less. And so one way to do that, of course, is to get some quotes if you're purchasing equipment, or look at different websites if you're hiring people to figure out what the going labor rates are for doing certain kinds of things. And then you also can often see this in a table format. Sometimes they want you to write it out in more of a narrative format. But this is as much for your planning as it's going to be for the funder. Again, they want to know that you can do what you're going to say you're going to do. And by planning adequately in a budget is often a good testament to how prepared you are to take on a project. So, for example, these might be some kinds of things that you have in a budget. Your personnel, your materials and supplies, equipment, printing, copies, mailing, travel. Every project, every proposal is going to be different, and you'll have to kind of think about that for what it is that you want to do. And then you'll notice there are 3 columns here. There's the total cost, which for this sample project includes both the match and the request. So the request, we'll start over here with the request column. That's what you're going to be asking this particular funder for. So the request is, for this project, is $8,000. You can kind of see how that breaks up. Maybe they're going to pay for the summer assistant who gets hired to help out with the program, but they're not going to be paying for the director who actually oversees the project, because that director's time has already been committed by the board and other fundraising in order to get that proposal up and running. And then, so maybe these other items are all things related to the project, and perhaps the limit is $8,000, or that's the appropriate cost that prospective grant writer is looking for from this particular funder. And so that nice round $8,000 number is what goes to the funder, and that's the ask that they will be requested to contribute. And at the same time, the matching part is kind of this is our skin in the game, often the phrase used to it. What are we bringing to the proposal? We're serious about doing this. We have our commitment already towards it. We're contributing to it. Maybe there are sometimes you might see that where there are other donors involved. So you might have multiple funders for the same project, and maybe some only fund equipment, and others might be able to fund other kinds of expenditures. So that's okay too. So I wanted to go back again and remind you that the process and the purpose of a proposal is to demonstrate to a funder that you can help them achieve their goals. You may have a very strong idea about what it is that you want to do, but the whole purpose of the proposal is to communicate to a funder that you understand their goals, and your piece of this work is going to help them move forward in what they want to achieve. So trying to flip that maybe perspective from what I need, what I want money for, to what do you need and how can we help you achieve your goals by doing what we intend to do. And so thinking in that perspective can really get you a long way. Again, a funder is looking for professionalism. They're looking for follow-through. They're looking for sound planning, both in how much time it takes to achieve a program or a process and how much money it takes. So if you can demonstrate that you're a good planner, that you have good communication skills, you're respectful, and that you have an innovative idea, then a funder is more likely to support it. All right, well, that's what I've got. So I'll be happy to take any of your questions if you have them. I see Carrie is trying to share something.
Oh, hold on. Let me get me unmuted here.
I've got you. I can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I would like to see if there's a way to get access to the other presentations that have recently been done, starting here in March. We're in a timeline for we were in the middle of a feasibility study, and I had left a message with Jody. I didn't know if we could find out if we could have access to those other presentations that were already done earlier in March.
Carrie, this is Jody. I just sent you an email with the links to the recordings, as well as somewhere where anyone who's attending can register your email so that I can send you all the recording links.
Very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I greatly appreciate this. Kris, what you've presented falls in line with, how we like to write our proposals and stuff, but it's nice to have it like this, because I think, especially with the graphs and the present, like for instance on the budget graph, the work process plan, I do think those things are helpful, and not only for the lender but for us.
Sure.
Those things.
Good. Thanks, Carrie. Does anyone else have a question? I see Rachel suggests resources for looking at examples of successful grant proposals. Having never written something like this, a tangible example would be helpful. Good. Well, and I can say there are many grant proposals out there, and it might be helpful to know a little bit, Rachel, about the kind of ideas that you have, or kind of organization that you are, so that we can send you something a little bit more close to what you might be looking at.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am a community wellness coordinator with the nutrition program for Purdue Extension in Lawrence County, and there's a farmers market here that is interested potentially in applying for a farmers market promotion program grant. And I contacted the, national organizer of the FMPP, but she said that there are no examples that she can share with me. So I'm somebody who learns by, seeing something, and my background is not in grant writing, so.
Sure.
Rachel, I have from the AMSTA training we did last year I can send you.
Okay. That would be great. Mm-hmm. You know my email, Jody.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jody. Okay, any other questions about the webinar or grant writing process? Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And again, Jody will send out the information about the webinar to each of you. If you register on the Qualtrics website that she sent earlier in the chat. Jody, I don't know if you can pull that back up again. Here, I think I can do it. Okay, if people don't have it.
That's there now.
Double take. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. Again, my email is on the screen if you have any further questions.
Thank you all.